Hey kids, welcome back. Let's check it out. 1984 Pontiac Fiero official pace car. Are you ready? Here, let's go. Check this thing out. Like I said, 1984 Pontiac Fiero official pace car. 1984 is the first year for the Fiero, and it has a really interesting history. If you've never heard of one, stick around because they're definitely unique. And it may be something you might want to pick up for a project car. This is actually my son's car, and it's filthy. And I contemplated cleaning it up a little bit because, hey, I'm filming it here and put your best foot forward. But I thought, nah, because I want people to see this thing gets driven every day. Winter, summer, it don't matter. And my work is about every bit of an hour from where I live. And I've driven it many, many times. Hour back, hour out, hour in. Never fails. This little car does everything it's supposed to do. When my son asked for a car, or we worked on trying to get him a car, I said, what do you want? And he said, I want a Corvette. And I said, yeah, fat chance. There's no way you're getting a Corvette before I do. So I started thinking, what could I get instead of a Corvette and have something that sort of had that feel? Well, I thought of a Miata. There's a lot of other little cars, but I had an 84 2M4 Fiero when they were fairly new, and I thought, man, Fiero might fit the bill. I know them. I worked on them when I was younger. This would be a pretty good car, and it is a pretty good car. But, man, they get some hate, I will tell you that. And we're going to try to dispel as much as that rumors as we can and let you know about the few things that you do got to watch out for. Fiero 2M4, like my car, meant two-passenger, mid-engine, four-cylinder. And that's exactly what this is, except it's a pace car. And the pace car, in the hierarchy of Fieros, is probably one of the most desirable ones to have. Besides an 88, which we'll talk about in a minute, in a T-top car, an Indy, as they call them, is definitely the most desirable. But in general, Fieros are not desirable. Never understood that. Let's check it out a little bit and see what makes a pace car a pace car. They have a special interior, kind of two-tone with red and gray, which isn't the same gray that they used on the other cars. They've got the Indy Fiero logo kind of embroidered into the seats here. And you can see, this is the driver, man. This has got all the stuff you need to get down the road, and it's got some wear on it, but it ain't no show car. We use this thing, and it does a pretty good job for us. If you poke around on the web, you might hear the rumor that Fiero's caught on fire and they burned up and killed everybody, and they're just awful. They're like the Hindenburg on wheels or something. That is not why I have this. Matter of fact, I have this in all my old cars, not because I think they're going to burst into flames, but in case they do, I'm ready. And also, you see somebody on the side of the road, you can help them out. This is just kind of like an aerosol temporary setup, but I highly recommend, if you drive old cars like I do, to get something like this as part of your safety kit. I mean, get some old tools, a glass hammer, seatbelt cutter, all that stuff. I mean, in anything, really, just be safe. And if you got a place to mount a legit fire extinguisher, put one in there. I mean, I've got a mount in my 76 Cutlass for that reason. Same deal. It's a safety issue. I mean, when you're dealing with gasoline and flammable materials, it just makes sense. But back to the Fiero story. A lot of people wonder what the heck's going on with these things. And I'll tell you, this was a program during the days of Pontiac's We Build excitement to where everything was performance. And I mean, the big cars were performance versions. The little cars were performance versions. And Pontiac had been wanting a two-seater for a long time, and they kept getting shut down. So they got pretty wise and said, here's how we do it. Let's call it a commuter car, and we can get it done. So that's what they did. They got the program approved, and it was very clever because people think Fieros are kind of odd, but really they're not. It's all GM parts bin stuff. Really the only unique thing about the car, well, there's a lot of unique things, but the only special parts on the car is the body panels. I mean, the front suspension is from a Chevette. It's slightly modified. The rear transaxle suspension and engine is all from the X body. So that's like a Citation or a Phoenix or some of the other kind of little, the first front wheel drive cars that GM really dealt with right at in the during the fuel crunch, and they just pushed it back. So this would normally be driving the front wheels with the engine right here where you see all these vents up at the front of the car in a front wheel drive car. They just scooted it back. Doesn't steer anymore. Still got some toe links, but they don't go to a rack and pinion and steer the wheels anymore. They just set the toe for the car. It's four-wheel independent suspension, which is pretty unique for an American car. And like I said, the front suspension is Chevette. And the body is mostly plastic. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, oh yeah, man, these things catch on fire and they'll burn down to where, they're melting like a candle. That's just total BS. I remember back when I had my 84 in like late 80s, early 90s, some old guy telling me that, all these things would catch on fire and they'd burn down to the ground and there'd be nothing left of them. Well, the funny thing about it is you can drive this car around without all the body panels on it. All these panels that you see, it's just a covering, which is pretty smart because it allowed Pontiac to change the look of the car for not a lot of money, because the tooling to make this plastic stuff is nowhere near the price of what it would take to make a sheet metal fender. But you can drive it around. It's got a complete chassis, space frame underneath it. Kind of like a endoskeleton, that is just covered by these different panels. So, like the Indy car or the Indy Pace Car version, it has a special arrow nose that they use later on in the GTs and the SEs. And the regular car had a completely different nose. It was more of a kind of a beak like other Pontiacs. And they took the same basic car and made a fastback out of it in later years. They came back, they had a little window, wider windows in here that you could see through. And they didn't change anything. It was the first American car with a 5-star crash rating, so it's still nothing to sneeze at in this day and age. Now, I've got some aftermarket wheels on this. The original wheels for the Indy were just like the regular wheels on like a SE, I believe, but they're painted white and had a red pinstripe around them. I've still got the stock wheels, but I wanted to put something on here where I could get tires, so I got these kind of, like American torque thrust style, I guess you'd call them. I don't remember what brand they are, but they fit the car. They kind of look like they belong here because of the kind of the deep gray, and they're 16s, and I can get tires for them. When we first got this car, somebody had painted it all white, and it's been painted like 500 times. I mean, you can see on one of the corners here. I mean, there's like a canyon. I mean, that's super deep because it's just paint after paint after paint after paint. They kept painting it white over and over and over again, and it needs to be stripped bare and repainted. It's not even the right color of white that it's supposed to be. I mean, you can see this headlight door doesn't match. It's been repainted. I've tried to touch it up with the factory color of white, and it doesn't match. I don't know if this was an Earl Scheib paint job, if you heard of them before, but man, it was bad. I mean, they didn't mask anything off. There's overspray on everything, and I had to go back and try to undo some of that. They painted all the side trim that's molded black plastic that runs down the side here. They painted that white, which is how the pace car, the actual track car, looked. But yeah, that doesn't work if you don't prep it right. So that was flaking off, and it looked terrible. And so I just had to bite the bullet and rattle can it black, which really doesn't look very good. But the lower part of the car is supposed to be this kind of deep gray here, which is a Corvette color from the era. And I didn't strip that. I just painted it. And you can see it's chipping off too. But this is 6 years that we've had this car. And I will show you if you think these things aren't durable. I don't know if you can see the odometer here or not, but I'll read it to you. Probably can't. Yeah, sun's in the way here. There you can. Yeah, 217,499 miles on this thing. It gets driven. And part of that high mileage is because of what's under this little hood here. So we'll check that out. Check that monster out. A whole 2.5 liters and I think 90 horsepower maybe. But back to what I said earlier, this is supposed to be a commuter car. But in Pontiac's planning, look how wide this engine bay is. If you poke around, you'll find that Pontiac always had the intention of putting a small V8 back here. Now, they didn't end up with a V6 in the back from the factory, or back here from the factory. They never quite made it to getting a V8 in there. The next generation was supposed to have a small aluminum V8 in the back, and I think that might have been related to what was called the Manhattan project. And I don't know if that was related to what the LS is now or not, but it never happened. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But hey, this engine that they chose was partially because this is what was used in the X body that I talked about earlier, the front wheel drive car. I believe if this isn't the last engine designed by Pontiac, it was one of the last engines. These things are rock solid. They put them in everything. I mean, Jeeps had them. They sold them to Jeep. Every front-wheel drive car had some version of this. Of course, Fiero's had a ton of them. It's known as the Iron Duke. This is actually not an Iron Duke. It is, but it isn't. I think the only time I've ever seen it officially called an Iron Duke was some print ads. I don't think, you could go in and say, I want an Iron Duke in my car, and they gave you one. It would just kind of got that nickname from an ad or two here. But this is actually called a Fortec because it has fuel injection. The Iron Dukes had carburetors, and this has throttle body fuel injection. And you'd think a 4-cylinder would get pretty good mileage, but this is a big 4-cylinder. And it's kind of thirsty, and it also is big enough that it doesn't run real smooth. A lot of 4-cylinders have balance shafts in them. This doesn't, and I made it worse by putting urethane, dog bone, what they call these things in here, because I didn't like it jumping around in the engine bay. But when it doesn't, you feel it in the steering wheel. But hey, it does great. if you look at the these two panels on the side here, they're kind of access panels. There's some emission control stuff and air intake and things in there. But on this side, the battery is under here. 84, these are solid, and they're not really common, so I got them stored. And these are later ones that have cooling vents in them. I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but I had a chance to get some, so I got it. There's a little trunk area in the back here. You can see daily driver, man. We got tools and all kinds of other garbage in the back here because it gets used. There's also a storage area in the front, but everything's pretty easy to get to. The hate that the Fiero gets, I don't understand, because it's like every other GM. There's really not a lot of special parts on it. I mean, this is all GM parts bin stuff. A lot of the guys that I see or hear kind of trashing these, I kind of immediately qualify them as not very good mechanics, because there's really nothing difficult to do on this car. It's all right there. You can get to it. Now, if you got to do something with driveline, then maybe you got a point. This car needed a flex plate right after I got it. This is an automatic, and there's only one way to get to it, and that's drop the cradle. But I didn't used to have access to a lift, so I jacked it up, put it on stands, 4 bolts, drops the cradle out, separate the transaxle from the engine, boom, done, put it back in there. So if you can't do that, I guess maybe you lack the skills. I don't know. Things are changing for sure. I think these are starting to get the respect that they deserve, at least I hope. I like to call this car kind of like a modern T-bucket because, like I mentioned earlier, this big engine bay, people have swapped anything and everything into this. I remember back when I had my first 84, it was a Hot Rod Magazine article. Guy had a built small block Chevy with a tonal ram in this thing, and it was pretty wicked. Now, he needed an adapter to bolt that to the transaxle, but there's plenty of V8s that will bolt to this. I mean, there's a LS variant. I don't remember which LS number that is, but like a Monte Carlo SS or something that has an LS V8 in the front. That bolts up to this transaxle, or you can put the transaxle from it in here. 3800 V6, including the supercharged ones. Quad 4s have been put in here. That doesn't bolt in, but you could do that. 3.4 liter V6s, pretty much all the front wheel drive stuff goes in here. North Stars, 4.9 Cadillac. That's kind of what I would like to do to this. There's room. It fits in there. I mean, even big block Chevys I've seen in these things, as crazy as that sounds. Yes, sideways big block Chevy in the back of this. Going further, it's a lightweight car, so people will put a Toronado transaxle, front wheel drive with the engine, north-south. They put that in the back here. Of course, that cuts into this area here, but I mean, you got a monster like when you're doing that. I've seen guys that, they make it conventional front engine and rear wheel drive, but yeah, all right. But I mean, you kind of lose the sexiness and the functionality of the mid-engine car, which is unique. I mean, everybody went gaga over the C8 Vet when that came out, but this kind of laid the groundwork for that. I think. I mean, they owe something to this little car, and this is back in the days when GM did whatever. They weren't scared to experiment. They got burnt with some of the other cars in the past, like the Corvair, which I also own. And then this came around, and they said, hey, let's go for it. And they made a pretty neat little car. And they're a lot of fun, and there is some aftermarket. There's some things you just can't get. I mean, some of the special interior pieces, but I'm pretty sure the door glass is 3rd gen F-body. I'm not totally sure on that, but I think it is. Windshield, this car had a busted windshield when we got it. I think every car I own has a busted windshield. But we got a windshield for it, so that's available. These mirrors, I think, are also 3rd gen F-body stuff. A lot of the trim pieces and handles, it's just regular GM stuff. I mean, if you got an Indy, you run into problems because you got special badging and things like that. But all the stuff's out there. Don't let it scare you. You can get the pieces and parts. I mean, taillights, yeah, if you need taillights, you probably got to get used. I just replaced this one. You can see the previous owner painted the top of this one, but that stuff's out there. And people have swapped. I'm not talking just American engines. I saw a VR6 in one of these the other day, and I was like, that is awesome. So, you got a 2,800-pound car. You put 300 horsepower in it or more. Look out. You've got, not only you got that awesome power to weight ratio, you got a mid-engine car. So, if you're into autocrossing or track days or whatever, where are you going to get a car like that configuration that does the same kind of thing? All right, let's look under the front here. As you can see, the hood hinges, or whatever you want to call it, the front cover, hinges at the front and lifts forward. So you got your radiator, which I believe is the same as a Corvette of the era. That's got cooling tubes running all the way underneath the middle of the car to the back to where the engine is. An electric fan, of course. Get your spare tire up here, No power steering in any Fiero ever, partially because you don't need it, and the technology at the time probably, if it existed, it would have been so expensive they wouldn't have been able to hit the price that they wanted to. But I believe that the next gen was going to have electric power steering, but of course that didn't happen. One of the special things on this car is the pop-up headlights or hideaway headlights. Definitely kind of an 80s thing for sure. You can see the top of this right here, little electric motor that lifts the headlight up and down. You can manually crank this up and hold the headlights up, like if it failed, or if you're, in an area to where you get an ice storm or something like that, and these headlight doors, they're spring loaded here. If they froze shut or something like that, that wouldn't break the ice, you could lift them up and manually and turn them on and make them work. So, unfortunately, those motors aren't being reproduced, but on the good side is that these early ones, there's 2 designs, they're the same as a Firebird. They're just swap sides, so left is right, right is left, and you can get those. I actually just hit the junkyard the other day, had one in there, got me a good core, because there's a guy in northern Indiana that rebuilds these. You can get replacement parts to rebuild them yourself, but usually they're so smoked that I just let him do it. There may be other guys doing that, but I'm hoping the aftermarket catches up, like I say, because these are pretty cool little cars. But this is a pace car. What does that mean? Well, if you look on the codes here, that very last one, Y82, that is a pace car. So that's what you're looking for if you want to try to find one of these. And the funny thing is, of all the pace car replicas that they've ever made, the Pace Indy, this is one of the lowest volume ones. I mean, I think there were like 2,200 made, and it just doesn't show. You talk about like a 69 Camaro pace car or something like that. I mean, you got one of those, you won the lottery. That's never going to go down in value. But these just, nobody really cares. But hopefully that'll change, because it's pretty cool. It's it's trimmed out, and again, this one's kind of beat, of course, but we drive it, and it gets dirty, it gets used. It won't always. We'll take it off the road and clean her up. You might see here, got some damage there. Well, that was where a speaker was. They have speakers in the headrest. Yeah, it's kind of like having headphones up there. Pretty cool idea. They work really well. They stopped doing it because I think the reason they initially did it was because of packaging, so they didn't have to mess with putting them in the doors. You see the doors get like a map pocket or something down there. But the later ones had them in the doors. But like I was talking about earlier, the rumors. I had a kid. Well, if I'm old enough to be your dad, I'm going to call you a kid, okay? A young guy told me, oh, hey, you got a Fiero? Yeah, those things caught on fire. The speakers in the headrest caught on fire. And I was like, dude, stop saying that. They did not. Lots of cars had speakers in the headrest, and that's not why they quit making that. And he's like, oh, yours must have been recalled and fixed. I was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And I usually don't get into that with people, but there was a big recall for these, and this has been performed on this car. What happened was, because these things sit so low, it only held like 3 quarts of oil. Well, people being people, they didn't check the oil, and they ran out of oil, and the engine blew up, and it's sort of tight quarters in here, and they set the thing on fire, and they're like, oh my gosh, this car is awful, it caught on fire. Well, no, you set it on fire because you can't take care of your car. So GM, being GM, they did the right thing, recalled all the cars and fixed them, put a longer dipstick, which you can tell, I think it's 100%, but if you ever see one where the dipstick is over on this side, this is 84, that one hasn't had the recall performed. I don't think there's any out there. I think everyone has had a new dipstick put in it because they just changed the mark on the dipstick and said, all right, put another quart of oil in it, and they put a heat shield back here too. That's that aluminum piece where I got the plug wires kind of glued to. And you can see there's some kind of rig stuff in there. But hey, we drive this thing, like I said, so we're not going for show quality. But that's what caused the fires. And that number is like less than 1%. I mean, I don't know, 0.1% or 0.5%, but it's a small number, and they made a lot of these cars. So somehow it just got that reputation, and people went crazy and said, oh, they catch on fire. That's not the case. Don't be scared of these cars. There's nothing wrong with them. I mean, if you're an idiot, you're going to hurt yourself with anything. So, yeah, stay away. But you're probably not if you're watching this video. So I encourage you, you're looking for a cool project car, this is it. Something different, because we dare to be different. This is it. Now, here's something else I want to show you. See these notches in this hood? That's not for style, okay? It's kind of a funky keyhole shape in here. And these kind of bolts, shoulder bolts that stand up. Well, they found out that if you hinge the hood this way and you get hit in the front, this hood turns into a guillotine and it comes sliding back towards you and separates whatever's in the way. I think they probably figured that out the hard way. Not on a Fiero, but on cars with a what I'm going to call a reverse hinge. I don't know when that happened, but Pontiac took care of us, and they put a little bend in this right here, and they put this bolt. So if you got hit, you got caught on this bolt, the hood folded up, and you get to keep your head. So thanks, Pontiac. See some more specific Indy Fiero badging on the front here. Packaged pretty well, actually. I mean, you can get to everything. Never really had to do anything difficult repair-wise to this car. It just goes and goes. I mean, I like every brand, but this is definitely in the era when, you could trust GM. Everything they did worked. And the stuff, you didn't have to hunt to find it if it broke. There's some brake parts on this that are just Fiero stuff, but you can get them. I don't have a problem getting it. I mean, I put brakes on all four corners. I mean, calipers, rotors, whatever. It's specifically Fiero stuff, but you can get it. If you need some kind of body panel or something like that, you might have trouble finding that. But finding that new, you won't find it, but you're going to have to get it used. But they're out there. And there's a couple aftermarket Fiero suppliers. Rodney Dickman, I think, is where I bought some stuff from. And the Fiero store, which that's easy to remember. They're good to deal with. I've bought from both of those guys, both those outfits. They got the stuff and no issues, and it's not a lot of money. It's not like I got a Studebaker pickup truck, and everything on that is like gold. You need a floor pan for that. Well, floor pan's $575 a side. If it was for my '68 Camaro, it'd be $50 for the same piece of sheet metal. But the Fieros aren't like that because all the stuff is from the GM's parts bin. And even some of the specialty stuff is not crazy priced. So there's my pitch for the Fiero, guys and gals. Go check one out. They're out there, and they're fun, and they're safe. Like I said, this was the first U.S. car with a 5-star crash rating. The fuel tank, you can see this transmission tunnel here. The fuel tank's right underneath there. It's in the perfect spot. If you got hit from any corner, it's not going to break. It's totally protected. You can get them plain Jane or optioned up a little bit. This has got, power windows, power door locks. It's automatic. But my first one was power nothing. It was a 4-speed car with a 4-cylinder. Had wind-up windows. It had air conditioning, and I think it had speed control, cruise control, and that was it. So, and I think you could get one even more bare than that. No air, no AC, and no cruise. So, if you're looking to build a track car, find one of those. It's less stuff to remove, and I'm telling you, man, you can put any engine back here. Internet is your friend. And the guys that know Fieros, they love them, and they will help. So check one out. 1984 official pace car. Well, once again, that's another one in the can. Like, subscribe, share, comment, do that homework. And we'll see you next time with something else unique on Smith Motorworks. Later.